Ladies and gentlemen, today we are stepping into the 1930s, a time when engineers suddenly discovered that air exists, and believe it or not, it actually pushes back. Yes, while most trucks of that era looked like they were designed by someone who lost a fight with a brick wall, Dodge decided to try something radical. What if a truck was shaped by science? The result was the Dodge Airflow truck, a machine that looked like it had been sent back in time by mistake, probably confusing a few horses along the way. And before we roll any further down this aerodynamic highway, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because where else are you going to hear about trucks that were smarter than their own customers? Exactly. Now, the Dodge Airflow story begins in the United States during the early 1930s, right in the middle of the Great Depression, a time when most people were trying to save money, and Dodge said, "What if we spend a lot of it on wind tunnels?" Bold strategy. Inspired by aviation research and the growing understanding of aerodynamics, Dodge engineers, working alongside Chrysler's experimental teams, wanted to revolutionize vehicle design. The goal was simple: reduce drag, improve efficiency, and make trucks more stable at speed. In reality, they also accidentally created some. The airflow concept had already been introduced in passenger cars, but Dodge extended the philosophy into commercial vehicles. These trucks were aimed at businesses that needed reliability and efficiency, delivery services, industrial operators, and forward-thinking companies that didn't mind their fleet looking like it had opinions about the future. Production numbers for airflow-based designs were never massive, partly because the public wasn't quite ready. Let's just say that when your truck looks too modern in 1934, people start asking questions, and not the good kind. The Airflow truck challenged that mindset. It introduced integrated body construction ideas, improved weight distribution, and smoother shapes. But many customers simply thought it looked strange, and in the 1930s, strange was a deal-breaker. It's like Timmy once said after trying to build his own aerodynamic fishing boat out of 2 barrels and optimism. If it looks weird fish, don't trust it. The same applied to buyers. Technically, the Dodge Airflow truck was far ahead of its time. Under the hood, it typically featured inline-six engines, with displacements around 201 to 218 cubic inches. That's roughly 3.3 to 3.6 liters, producing in the range of 75 to 85 horsepower. Not exactly lightning fast, but respectable for a commercial vehicle in that era. The engine was positioned further forward compared to traditional layouts, helping to balance weight more effectively across the chassis. The transmission was a manual gearbox, usually 3-speed, sending power to the rear wheels. Suspension setups remained conventional, solid axles with leaf springs, because even revolutionaries have limits. Braking systems were mechanical drum brakes, later transitioning toward hydraulic systems, improving stopping power in a time when stopping was more of a suggestion than a guarantee. What truly set the Airflow apart was its body design. The cab was integrated and more rounded, reducing wind resistance significantly. Instead of a flat vertical grille, the front was gently curved, allowing air to flow around the vehicle rather than slam into it like an unpaid bill. This improved fuel efficiency and stability, especially at higher speeds, which for the 1930s meant anything above mildly alarming. Dimensions varied depending on configuration, but these trucks typically measured around 16 to 18 feet in length, approximately 4.9 to 5.5 meters, with wheelbases ranging from about 120 to 140 inches, or 3.0 to 3.6 meters. Weight hovered around 3,000 to 4,500 pounds, roughly 1,360 to 2,040 kilograms, depending on load capacity and body style. Despite all these advancements, the market response remained cautious. People weren't quite ready to embrace a truck that looked like it had read a book. And as my neighbor Bob once said while staring suspiciously at anything newer than 1950, if it's too smooth, it's probably hiding something. He still thinks aerodynamics is a government conspiracy. Yet, from a modern perspective, the Dodge Airflow truck represents something remarkable, a leap forward that the world simply wasn't ready for. It wasn't just a truck, it was a glimpse into the future, wrapped in steel and misunderstood ambition. When we look at the design philosophy of the Dodge Airflow truck, we are essentially looking at one of the earliest attempts to treat a truck as a scientific object rather than just a moving box. Engineers studied airflow patterns, experimented in wind tunnels, and tried to create a body that worked with the air instead of fighting it like a stubborn mule. The rounded cab, the sloped front, and the more unified body structure were all part of a vision that said efficiency is not just for airplanes. It was bold, rational, and unfortunately for sales, visually confusing to buyers who expected their trucks to look like they could survive a fistfight with a building. This philosophy extended beyond looks. The weight distribution was improved, placing more mass between the axles for better stability. The driver sat in a more forward and integrated position, improving visibility and control. Even comfort, a word rarely associated with 1930s trucks, was quietly considered. Dodge wasn't just building a truck, they were rethinking what a truck could be. Compared to its competitors, the Airflow truck stood out like a jazz musician at a military parade. Most trucks of the early 1930s were still boxy, tall and brutally simple. Brands like Ford and Chevrolet focused on durability and familiarity, offering vehicles that customers already understood. Dodge, on the other hand, offered innovation, and innovation, as history repeatedly shows, often arrives a little too early for its own good. The market response reflected this gap. While the Airflow ideas were technically sound, sales lagged behind expectations. Buyers preferred the conventional shapes they trusted, even if those shapes were less efficient. It's the same logic as Bob refusing to upgrade his glasses because the old ones still show me what I need. Mostly, the Airflow truck didn't fail because it was bad. It struggled because it challenged habits, and habits are incredibly loyal. Yet, over time, the influence of the Airflow concept became undeniable. Later, trucks and vehicles gradually adopted smoother shapes, better weight distribution, and more integrated designs. What seemed strange in the 1930s became standard decades later. In many ways, the Airflow truck was not a failure. It was a preview. As for pricing, vehicles based on the Airflow concept were positioned competitively for their time, typically costing in line with mid-range commercial trucks of the early 1930s, though exact figures varied depending on configuration and market condition. Today, surviving examples are extremely rare, and when they appear at auction, they attract serious collectors. And if you ever find one, take care of it, not just because it's valuable, but because it represents a moment when engineers looked at the wind and said, "We can do better." So, here's my advice, dear viewers. Don't be afraid to be a little like the Airflow. Try something ahead of your time. Sure, people might look at you funny. Timmy still gets strange looks when he explains his self-cooling engine powered by optimism, but one day the world might catch up. And if not, well, at least you'll have a great story